Hashem na'aseh v'natzliach, Shir Torah, Bruchim Habayim. So there's a lot to say, there's a lot to do. The news keeps coming, from all different sources, from private sources, from public sources. And it's interesting that in this week's parasha, Parashat Matot Maaseh, it's 2 parasha week. In the first paragraph in the book of Numbers, chapter 30, verse number 3, says, "Kekol hayotze mipiv ya'aseh," that a person, if a man will take a vow to Hashem and swear on oath to establish a prohibition upon himself, he shall not desecrate his word. According to whatever comes from his mouth, he shall do. The last part is what I read in Hebrew. From here we learn that the things that a person says hold a lot of weight in Shamayim. Whatever you say, you have to do it. You have to do it. Now, interestingly, we all know that sometimes we talk nonsense. We say things that are incorrect. We sometimes say things that are deceitful, sometimes outright lies. We say things that are wrong. And for this we pray. For this we pray every single day at the end of Amidah. The end of Amidah says, Eloi netzol leshoni mira, v'siftotai medaber mirma. That after everything we've prayed in Amidah, after at the end, right before you take the 3 steps back and you say, Oseh Shalom Imromav, there's a whole paragraph. That's a custom of Israel to do it, where you say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, my God, please guard my tongue from evil, Netzol leshoni mira, and my lips from speaking deceitfully. Here we see that speaking evil and speaking deceitfully are 2 different things. And you're asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu to protect you from both. Now lying, cheating, things of that nature, that's not so hard to explain, not so hard to understand. But what about speaking evil? A lot of people speak evil, so much so that we have to pray for it 3 times a day, asking HaKadosh Baruch Hu to please help us from speaking evil. Well, let's see. If you noticed, Rabotai, and I promise you the shiur is not going to be about them, but just to notice a point, all of the people that, these Reshaim that we've exposed over the years, whether it was Goldberg or Manis Friedman or Meravis, or most recently Asher Meza, generally speaking, the one common denominator among all of them, aside from their deceit and their lashon hara and their all types of heresy and so on, some common denominator that perhaps some of you were clever enough to notice is that after we exposed all of the skeletons that they were hiding in their closets, in their lectures, where some of their videos would be good, but inside each video there would be some form of heresy. Generally speaking, it wasn't the whole thing that was bad. It was usually, a few moments within, some more, some less. Some are experts at it, so like Manis Friedman, that literally every other sentence is something problematic, but nonetheless, it looks great for most people that don't know the difference between what is the Torah and what is philosophy of his mind. But nonetheless, the one thing that I've noticed is that after we've exposed each one of them, they all got worse. Meaning, their heresy and their just manic behavior, an antithetical to the Torah type of behavior, got much worse after we exposed them. Now you would say it was, so maybe you shouldn't expose people because they're getting worse. Opposite. Why? The Torah is compared to, by the sages, as an analogy, they're compared to water. Now, if you live in Florida where it rains simply like half the year here, or at least it seems like it, you notice that it rains. And what happens when it rains? All of the creatures come out. The worms come out of the ground, the frogs, the toads. You have like a little jungle outside of your door. In every house, doesn't matter if you're living in the Boca Raton or in Cooper City or in Hollywood, everywhere, there's all these little creatures come out and have a good time, but only after it rains. You're not going to see the worm hanging out in a scorching sun. It'll die. Same thing with the frog and the toads and so on. You're not going to see them, but when it rains, and there's a lot of rain, all of these creatures come out. The Torah is the same thing. Once you show the truth of Torah, those that are real hold on to it. Whereas those that are fakers, they're heretics and so on, all of their heresy, all of their worms, all of their spiritual maggots come out, all of their frog beliefs come out, and they show you who they really are. And most things you just ask yourself. You ask yourself, and I used to ask myself this in the past, is it better or is it worse? The reason why it's better, and my Rav told me it's better to do it, is because this is actually what Am Yisrael did to deal with Christianity. Christianity, which surely started, many, many years after Jesus actually died, and the people that wrote the New Testament, perhaps, didn't even know who he was, never saw him or anything like that, disagreed with each other. It was started with a bunch of ignorance and illiterate people, but at least, they got themselves a crowd. Sort of like the crowd some of these other Reshaim get. People that are ignorant and, are easy to pick on, easy to take advantage of, easy to fool. And what ends up happening is that in the beginning of Christianity, because there was, before Christianity, there was Judaism, and then there was paganism. That's it. There wasn't like other things. So then Christianity is born. Islam is born many hundred years later. I think something like 600 years later or so. So you have paganism, praying to statues, praying to the sun, praying to, people, praying all types of stupid things. And then you have Judaism, the truth that's always been. But now you have Christianity, which claims that they're praying to a God, the same God, but also there's a man, and also there's some type of ghost. Perhaps this ghost will be in a movie a couple thousand years later, and go into Hollywood. Not really sure who this ghost is and how he comes about. But nonetheless, you have this little ghosty thingy, and you have this guy that looks like a rock star, and you have supposedly the same God of Israel. Now, because the people that they started it with were ignoramuses, illiterates, who could not check anything for themselves. They simply relied on the teacher, really much like most people today. They rely on the teacher. So they couldn't verify true, not true. And in reality, what ended up happening is that people still felt that they were being Jewish. They just had an additional savior, an additional helper, a middleman. Even though this is against the foundation of Judaism, they didn't know enough about Judaism, despite being Jewish, to know that this is wrong. And what ended up happening is that Christianity at its birth was very, very similar to Judaism. They kept the Sabbath, they kept kashrut, they kept a lot of the laws. Only later on did this change, where the Pope changed it to from Shabbat to Sunday, and no more kosher, and completely abandoning all of the laws of the Torah. And now they say, listen, we don't need to abide by the 10 commandments. We need to abide by something more difficult. What? We need to be moral people. It's the most ridiculous thing in the world. We have to believe in Yoshke, and we have to be moral people, and that's much harder than keeping the 10 commandments, which breaks up into 613. Obviously, only somebody that's, spiritually sick actually believes this is more, or this is better, or this is true. But nonetheless, there's a lot of people, unfortunately, that think this. And we cry for those people too, to wake up and see the truth. But nonetheless, at birth of Christianity, the original Christians were Jews. And those Christians looked like Jews, acted like Jews, and it created a problem. So the Chachamim had to decide, what are we going to do? Because you have a couple of, bad people starting this whole thing, and it's causing some decent people to fall prey to it because they don't know the difference. So they decided to take one of the Chachamim, it ended up eventually being two, and go and infiltrate into the Christian world and do all types of things necessary to get them to follow you. And one of the Chachamim did it. Later on he'll be called Paul, and he did some miracles in order to fool them into thinking that he's the continuation of Jesus. And once they adopted this whole thing, once they followed him as the new leader, as the new connection, if you will, to Jesus and so on, his number one job was to make Christianity as different from Judaism as possible. Hence the reason changing it from Shabbat, Saturday to Sunday, eliminating the law and so on and so forth. So the whole thing of exposing the truth is not so easy. It's not so easy because you have to make sure that people know enough to follow along. And if they can't follow along, you have to sometimes take extreme measures in order to make sure that they do follow along, because they can see the difference. The difference is more clear. And that's what happened with Christianity. And obviously today, no one is mistaken the vast majority of Christianity for Judaism until last several decades, where the Christians have a new trick up their sleeve, and they started this thing called Messianic Judaism, which is 100% Christianity, but nonetheless, the ignoramuses of the world will fall prey to it to a certain extent and believe that they're Jewish even though they're 100% not Jewish. Now, and also believe that the word Messiah in Christianity, or so-called Messianic Judaism, has the same definition as Messiah in Judaism, which is, although it's the same word, at completely two different definitions. To us, Messiah means a human being that Hashem sends to the world, that it's a regular human being born from a man and a woman, not a man and a man, and not some ghost, and not some nothing. Just a regular, typical man, as far as flesh and blood, who was very, very righteous. Some Chachamim say he's even a Baal Tshuva. But the point being is that this man eventually discovers himself when Hashem sanctifies him and instills certain supernatural powers into him, as it says in Jeremiah, and also in the other prophets discuss it, how he's going to be able to, smell the sins of man and kill people with his words, do all types of things that are supernatural. And but this has to be done first by a prophet, and the prophet that will do this is going to be a Eliyahu Navi, who never died. And now this Messiah, who's Hashem is going to make him a king in this world, is a human. It's not a supernatural, being of a divine of any kind. He's a human being. And he's the highest level of human being, aside from Moses. Moses is still higher than him. And the Kabbalists say that his neshama has the spark, not the whole neshama or even half, but the spark of King David and Moses in him. So there's certain Kabbalistic teachings that talk about the neshama of the Messiah. But nonetheless, everyone agrees this is a normal human being. Loves the Torah, righteous, zealous for Hashem, and so on. Messiah in Messianic Judaism, i.e. Christianity, is another word for God. That's what it means according to their testament. Anyone that's a Christian is a Christian because of the New Testament. And the New Testament says that Jesus is part of God, or is God, or whatever some idolatrous belief they have. That's why we consider it idolatry. And the Rambam paskins that Christianity is 100% idolatry. Now, so when a person is unaware of this, they think, oh, what's the big deal if I believe that Jesus is the Messiah? Just like some Chabadniks believe that the Lubavitcher Rebbe, Alav Shalom, is also the Messiah, and some other people believe other people are the Messiah. Isn't it all the same thing? No, it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. They're all wrong, but nonetheless, it's not the same thing. Why? Because the Messiah in Christianity is another word for God. This is a fact. It's not a opinion. It's a fact. It's in their New Testament. It's in their book. If your friend that's a Christian or family member that's a Christian believes that Yoshke was not God, then he doesn't believe in the New Testament. He has a different religion. So if you already have a different religion, why don't you just adopt Judaism completely and abandon idolatry altogether? I'm not really understanding why people do that, but nonetheless, sometimes people get, hung on specific things. But the key is that we know as Jews what is the foundation of Judaism based on our Torah and the works of our sages and so on. And in the Christian world, they know more or less their foundational beliefs, if you will, is really predominantly based on believing in Yoshke, and that he's going to simply allow you to make every single crime under the sun. As long as you believe in him, you'll be saved somehow. So in essence, it's an open ticket to criminality, but that's unfortunately their beliefs. But it's important that people know that there's a difference. With the wicked people that we've exposed, in the beginning, when we first exposed them, it was very hard for people to tell the difference. Why? Because he's a rabbi, or holds himself as a rabbi because that's the title that is there before his name. And he's a rabbi because that's the title before his name. He speaks about Judaism, and he speaks about Judaism. He covers his head, and he covers his head. He, says that Judaism is great, and he says Judaism is great. He says God is one, and he says God is one, and so on and so forth. So on the surface, it looks the same. But that's why it needed to be exposed, because when we showed the different clips of different forms of heresies that these people talked about and so on, people started noticing, oh, okay, there's a problem. There's a problem, or maybe it's taken out of context, and some people would be detailed enough to actually go see the entire video and see the truth and see that the clip is actually an understatement. They're actually much worse than what we said. And but they didn't even have to do that. Why? Because these people, after we've exposed them, the more effective it was, the worse they got. The worse their foreign beliefs got, the more adamant they were about their foreign beliefs. And this happened again with Asher Meza, which just literally in the last 24 hours made a video, wrote comments, and stated this a couple of times. I'm not sure if he stated it in the past also. I doubt it. But he outright says, there is no consequence for not keeping Torah if you don't live in Israel. Meaning, according to Asher Meza's religion, it's not Judaism. He just calls it Judaism, just like the Christians call the Messiah, God, and God Messiah, and we call Messiah as a human being. Same thing with Meza. He says that according to him, and there is no source on planet Earth that will ever say such a thing other than him, that you don't need to keep the Torah and the mitzvot in the Galut. He says you should, but you don't have to. And there's no consequence whatsoever of not keeping the Torah and the Galut. The Torah doesn't mention any. It wasn't part of the agreement according to him. All you have to worry about is ethics. God holds ethics. God holds people accountable in regards to ethics. Now, who defines ethics? Maybe Meza does. Maybe his friends do at the Freemasons, or perhaps the Proud Boys, or maybe his bike club. Not really sure who holds the ethics committee. Haven't been notified yet. But nonetheless, he says Torah is only for people that live in Israel. Which means that, according to him, all of the Jews that live outside of Israel, including himself, can desecrate Shabbat, can eat taref, can simply do whatever they want, marry non-Jews. They can do whatever they want according to him. These are his words. Apparently, he skipped the blessing in Amidah that says, Elohai netzol leshoni mira. Guard my tongue from evil, my lips from speaking deceitfully, because he did both in both of those things. But he's not the only one. There's a wicked, evil man that is in the Israeli government, the finance minister, named Avigdor Lieberman, Yimach Shemo v'zichro, who is Safek Jewish. I'm not really sure if he's even Jewish, Bechlal. I highly doubt he is. But has declared an outright war against the religious Jews to the extent that he said that he wants to throw all of the religious Jews into the ocean, similar to what the Palestinians say. Has campaigns when he was running for prime minister that were very, very similar statements to Hitler, Adolf Hitler, the Nazi that, annihilated 6 million Jews. And he has this hatred for Jews that is unlike pretty much anybody else. Even the Arabs don't hate us as much as this guy does. Perhaps it's the verse, that the prophet says, your conquerors, your destroyers will come from within you, is being fulfilled by Lieberman and his friends, but much more with him. Today it was announced that this finance minister, Lieberman, is taking another shot at the religious community, where it bothered him that some of the religious people study Torah for a living, and only one of the parents, one of the spouses, works. And yet, they get a financial incentive from the government, like many other people, that they take advantage of, which is that there is a daycare service that they get $300 a month for. $300 a month for anyone that lives on planet Earth is not much money. Not in Israel, not in America. Perhaps it's worth more in Israel than it is in America, but either way, it's not worth much. Nonetheless, he's bothered that this family, that only one parent works, gets $300 a month from the government for daycare, and now he's making 18,000, and some say 24,000 families simply either decide that the husband is going to leave the kollel, stop learning Torah, or give up on the $300 a month. Now, all of the other parents that are not religious, the Arabs, everybody else, no, that's not on his agenda. He doesn't care about them. In fact, he gives them much more money. The government gives them a lot more money. But his focus has always been about the religious people. And many people that are ignorant and that are full of hatred for the Torah and for Hashem and for rules usually jump to the conclusion that the religious people are, feeding off of the government. They're milking everybody. They don't work. They don't do anything, and so on and so forth. And one of the main people that does this is Lieberman. But the truth is very, very different than the words. In several lectures, videos that were published by Rabbi Zamir Cohen and Hidabrut, articles online by news networks and so on, they've actually reported the actual real numbers. The government reports the numbers and so on. Now, most people don't necessarily read this stuff, either because they're not financially savvy, they're not interested, they don't have time. So most people are falling for the false words of Lieberman and the people like him that say that the religious people don't work and they milk the government and they take advantage of them and they this and they that, when the truth is not only this, but it's actually the opposite. Meaning that the secular world, especially in Israel, benefits a lot more from the religious people than the religious people benefit from them. And I'm not talking about spiritually of how the whole country exists just because of the religious people learning Torah and so on. That's obviously a completely different issue. I'm talking about money. I spent almost 20 years on Wall Street. I don't believe anybody can really debate me on the issues of money and finance and things of that nature. I spent a lot of time doing a lot of big work. I did something around $1 billion in transactions over my career. $1 billion is a lot of money. So I think I know a few things about companies, about reading balance sheets and so on and so forth. And the beautiful part is, this is not even something that requires an expert. This just requires a brain that works. Let's see what the truth really is. Lieberman says that giving a religious person $300 a month is killing the government. Killing the government. He has to stop it. And the vast majority of these 20,000 or so families will have to stop getting this financial incentive if they want the husband to continue learning Torah. Only something around 10% of them are both parents are working. So he has an argument here that, see, look, only one parent is working. The other one is milking off of the government, right? Let's see. Statistics that came out from the Israeli government itself reported that in Israel, 78% of the secular people work. Versus in the Haredi world, religious world, 61% work. Meaning, we're not talking about 0% work. In fact, we're not even talking about a significant difference. We're talking about a 17% difference. 78% of secular, 61% of Haredi. Now, this 17% is not a big difference, but it's actually even smaller than you can imagine. And the reason why is because out of all of Israel, according to their statistics, only 12% of the population are actually Haredim, religious Jews. 12%. 70% are secular, 21% are Arabs. So you have yourself, almost 70% are secular, 21% are Arabs, meaning that there's more Arabs than there are religious people. So this 17% is not like millions and millions and millions of people. If, let's say, there's 10 million people that are in Israel together, 1.2 million are religious. That's it. And out of that 1.2 million, 17% are not working. Now, they are working, they're learning Torah, but they're not working in a traditional economy of commerce and lawyers and doctors and so on and so on. 17%. So you're talking about, rough estimate, let's call it 200,000 people. That's it. The whole craziness of billions of dollars and anarchy in the entire country is over a couple of 100,000 people. Less than 2% of the entire population. He's saying that 2% of the entire population is killing the other 98%. Let's see if they are. Let's see if they are. Now, if you really look at the religious community, you'll find that most of them work. Well over half. Like I said, 61%. And 100% of all of the religious people pay the same exact sales tax as the secular people, which is 18% approximately. Which means that half of the taxes that the government gets comes from sales tax. Half of the taxes. All the taxes they get comes from sales tax. Both religious, non-religious pay the same exact 18% tax. You go to the store to go buy some candy, to go buy bread, to go buy anything, a house, to go anything, you are paying a sales tax. That sales tax, everybody pays the same thing. Just because you have a coupon or you don't have a coupon, the store doesn't change the price because of you. You want to buy a car, you want to buy a computer, you want to buy anything, paying the same sales tax. That's half the taxes. It's half the taxes. Which again, we go back to our 200,000 people. 200,000 people. They're still paying the same sales tax as everybody else because they still have to eat, they still have to drink. Whether or they join the corporate world, they still have to pay the same sales tax. So already we see the numbers are skewed into a sense of trying to put a brand of evil on the wrong party here. Second, the ones that do work, what do? They sell books. What do they? They only deal with religious people? Absolutely not. You'll see businessmen, some of them even billionaires. You'll see lawyers, doctors, accountants, bus drivers, store owners, entrepreneurs in technology, all types of things, teachers. Now, further, you'll see that 95% of all of the taxes coming into Israel, half of it, like I said, is coming from sales tax, the other half is other types of taxes. But out of that entire 100%, 95% of it comes from the top 30% of the population, while the rest, the 5% of the population, 5% of the taxes, comes from the lower 70%. Again, showing that the vast majority of people, 70% of the population, are not really responsible for most of the income of the government anyway. Whether they're secular or Arab or religious, they're only contributing 5% of the total taxes for the entire country, even if they are working or not working. Which again shows that these 200,000 people, at best, they're responsible for a microcosmic percent of the actual taxes or the effect on the economy altogether. As far as taxes and so on and so forth. Okay, fine. Now, Lieberman and his friends claim that they're spending not just money on these daycare programs, but they're spending countless money on the Torah institutions. Let's see, how much do they spend on all of the institutions? In regards to general culture, not Torah related, the government spends 900 million shekels per year, of which 5% goes to anything related to Judaism. Some, religious, some not religious, some are things that are not have nothing to do with the Haredi community. But out of the total of 900 million, 5% goes to Jewish culture. An insignificant, inconsequential number. What about the yeshivot? Because they're complaining, or they're giving a lot of money to yeshivot. They're destroying the economy, these yeshivot. We have to, these kollels, these this, these that. Okay, let's see. A higher education budget in Israel is 9 billion shekels. 9 billion shekels a year. Which is for 200,000 students. This seems like small numbers in comparison to people in America and other countries, but this is Israel. It's not such a big country. 9 billion budget, somewhere around $3 billion or so, are spent on higher education, which is for 200,000 students. Now, a secular student that wants to get higher education costs the government 50,000 shekels per year for the 3-year program. Meaning, for him to complete, or for her to complete this higher education program will cost the government 150,000 shekels, or approximately $50,000. So if he wants to learn the history of Rome, the dress that the queen of Greece, or perhaps maybe the shoe sizes of the leaders of China 3,000 years ago, he could learn it, and it'll cost the government 150,000 shekels for him to complete this entire program. 150,000 shekels. A yeshiva bachur doesn't cost 50,000 shekels a year, or $150,000 shekels to complete the program, but rather $2,880, meaning less than 3,000 shekels a year, less than $1,000 a year is what a yeshiva bachur cost the government. In comparison to 50,000. So over 3 years, a yeshiva bachur will get a total of almost 9,000 shekels, about $3,000, less than $3,000. Secular, learning about dinosaurs, that we came from monkeys, amoebas are going to run over the world, and aliens, he gets 150,000. What about the Avrechim that they complain about, that don't join the army, and so on and so forth? How much do they get? 5,160 per year. Which means, Rabotai, that what a Avrech will get in 3 years, what a secular student learning about China will get in 3 years, 150,000 shekels, will take an Avrech, an adult that has a family, 30 years to get. 30 years to get versus 3 years. That's the reality. These are the numbers published by the government. So it doesn't bother Lieberman and the lefty liberals that to learn about China and amoebas and the world came from nothing is going to cost them 150,000 shekels. Even if that student is an Arab terrorist that's eventually going to kill Jews, they're also going to spend 150,000 shekels on him. Even if he's some Christian that decided to move to Eretz Israel, they're also going to pay 150,000 shekels for him. But chas v'shalom, he's a religious Jew. No. Not only we're not going to pay him 150,000 shekels for him to learn, but quite the opposite. We're going to do everything in our power to cancel that 5,000 shekels that he gets per year. The $1,000, $1,500 that he gets per year, it bothers the government too much. It's killing the society. Now, the truth is, what happens to the society as a result of the religious people versus the secular people? What are the results? Now, of course, we can say that the religious people are better people. They're more moral. They're more righteous. They're more giving. We could say all of that, but you may not want to believe. Why? Because you're going to say that I'm biased. And you're right, I am biased. But let's look at the numbers. The numbers say, Rabotai, that show us where morals are, simply by looking at the prisons. Who ends up in prison? Simple. Who ends up in prison? The more moral you are, less likely you are to end up in prison. If you teach your kid that he has to honor his parents and it's an obligation from God, if you teach your kid that he's not even allowed to sit in his father's chair, if you teach your kid that he has to be giving and he has to love other Jews and he has to help and he has to be polite and he has to be afraid of God and not make certain sins, versus if you teach your kid, do whatever you want, just don't get caught. Go play video games that kill people, that's not such a problem. There's nothing wrong with it. If you steal, just make sure you don't get caught. If you want to act like husband and wife with somebody else's daughter, go ahead and do it. It's a cute thing. We like to see 12-year-olds have babies. Even though you're going to abandon her 2 minutes after you had your pleasure. And so on and so forth. You see it. If you want to do some drugs, listen, just don't do too much. You don't die because it's going to cost us a lot of money to bury you. If you want to sell drugs, sell it for a good price. You have a lot of customers. In essence, the education is a little bit different. Not all secular people think that way, but nonetheless, that's the actual results. Whether they are educated that way by their parents or by society, that's the actual results. How do I know that's the results? Out of 3.5 billion shekels that are spent on the prison system in Israel, who are the ones that are benefiting the most? It surely isn't the religious people. Why? 64.5% of the inmates are secular people. 33% are Arabs. We are now at 97.5%. Only 2.2% of all of the inmates in prisons are Haredi people. Which means that while you may want to complain that out of the $3.5 billion, a billion shekels, 70 million is going to the religious people, you can't really claim that. Why? Because over 2 billion goes to the religious, to the secular, and over $1 billion goes to the Arabs. You're going to complain about 70 million? I don't think so. Especially since you're doing society a favor by removing these Arabs and these criminals from society. Now, That's one way to show who's more moral. Another way is to see what we spend our time. Where is the money of the government going? The government spent 94.9 million on theater, 79.5 million on movies, 64.9 million on music, 10.5 million on Arab culture, 9.8 to learn different types of skills, 4.9 million was a specific course about plastic. You want to learn about different types of plastics? Government's willing to pay, and does pay, almost 5 million shekels a year just for you to go learn about these plastic. It's a useful talent. Maybe you can make a career out of it. We have to spend money on it. After all, the government does get all this money from taxes. 5 million for plastic, 9.8 million for different skills. Arab culture, that must be important in a Jewish country. Over 10 million goes to the Arab culture. Music, who doesn't like music? 60.9 million. Movies, of course you want to destroy your neshama and watch a lot of movies. Almost 80 million. And theater, and it's 95 million. Right. How much on Torah institutions? All of the yeshivot, the budget for all of the yeshivot, the kollels and everything. How much did they get? Do we get 90 million like the theater? Do we get 80 million like the movies? Perhaps we get 65 million like the music. Or maybe like the Arabs at least. So we're equal with the Arabs. They get 10.5 million. We should get 10.5 million at the very least. Even though it's a Jewish country, we should at the very least get just as much for Judaism and Torah as the Arabs that are trying to kill you. You would think. But that means that you're actually trying to make sense of the whole thing. It doesn't make sense. Why? The government is run by enemies of the Torah. Whether it was Avigdor Lieberman or Lapid or Naftali Bennett, or it was the one before them, the Netanyahu, that everyone thought he was Messiah, but in reality he's more close to the Messiah of the Christians than he is the Messiah of the Jews. Why? The budget for Torah institutions in total, 8.3 million. That means, Rabotai, that all of the Torah institutions in Israel, in total, get 8.3 million. We get just a little bit more than plastic. Less than any other skill, less than the Arabs, not even 10% of what they spend on theater, approximately 10% of what they spend on music, and a little bit more than that than they spent on movies. 8.3 million. We're talking about $3 million. In so many words, one rich guy, and not even that rich, in America or anywhere else, can actually outfund all of the government expenses that Israel cries about, and Lieberman and Lapid and all of the other Rishaim cry about Torah institutions. One rich guy throws a few $1 million to Israel, finish, we don't need the government anymore. I don't know why people haven't done this already. Now, surely you do know that a lot of money for Torah institutions is not coming from the government. It's come from both rich and poor people. Statistically speaking, over 90% of adults 20 years and over, 20 years old and over in the religious community donate money. In comparison to secular, only 63%. Only 63% of adults 20 years and older that are secular donate money to any cause, to a zoo, to anything. But Haredi community, since it's part of our Torah, over 90% donate money. What are they donating the money for? Is this donations only benefiting the religious community? Let's see. Haredi organizations, non-profit organizations, such as Atzala, that is an organization that has expanded and has saved lives, both Jewish and not Jewish, not just in Israel, but in America and other places, saves the government hundreds of millions of dollars. Organization like Yad Sarah, providing different types of medical supplies and all types of services that really the government is supposed to supply. They do it, not for profit, not for fees, saving the government at least $1.4 billion per year. 1.4 billion. Meaning, They save the government by themselves more than the entire budget that is spent on the religious community. Ezra Marpeh, which is Rav Firer, the genius that has helped countless people, on an average about 100,000 people helped saving lives, religious, not religious, doesn't make a difference. They don't tell you, listen, we're only going to help you if you wear a kippah. We're only going to help you if you're if you love God. No, even if you hate God and you're lefty liberal, you call Rav Firer, he's going to help you. Saving the government somewhere in the neighborhood of $100 million a year. By himself, just his organization. All of these organizations are run by religious people. Most of them funded by religious people. And yet, people have the audacity to complain about how we're taking from the government. When was the last time Atzala asked anybody if they're religious or not? I'll tell you, never. When was the last time any of the organizations that's providing literally tons and tons of food to poor people asked them if they're religious or not? Never. Our 10,000 people that we've already fed this year in Israel, we're on pace to feed almost 20,000 people this year. We try to cater to religious people, but we don't ask them if they're not religious. They still get food. If they have a health issue, we still help. And we're not even based in Israel. Literally, the amount of money that the religious community contributes to society in Israel and other places far, far surpasses any type of financial benefit that any government, including America, including Israel, and combining them, could ever offer them in return. The problem is, Rabotai, is that sometimes there are certain people in the religious community that make a mistake which we're all judged for. They take advantage of programs for their own greed, even if they don't need to. Whether it's welfare or getting different money for their schools and different types of things that are simply not necessary. The smartest community in America, in my opinion, is the Satmar community. Not because they have the most amount of scholars, I have no way of knowing that. Not because they have the greatest Yirat Shamayim, also I have no way of knowing that. Surely they're righteous people, decent people, and so on. But for sure they're the smartest. How do I know? They don't use any government money. Not in Israel, not in America, not at all. And that's the reason their schools, their yeshivot, have never been threatened. But yet, modern Orthodox and other Chabad and other types of religious yeshivot in America and in Israel are literally threatened to get shut down every other day by some type of villain from somewhere. If we simply just stop taking government money, stop it. It's not even that much to begin with. There is a way to do it. That's why one of our ambitions, one of our dreams, and if Yirtzeh Hashem, the goal is for us to open a yeshiva that will not only accept all of these Jewish kids and make sure that they do tshuva and their family does tshuva and they have to be serious about it, but it's not going to be based on money. You know what it's going to be based on? Do you want to serve Hashem or not? One of the main things we're going to have, we're not going to take any government money. And even more so, one of our greatest ambitions is not even to take money from the people either. To make it 100% donor funded. If you have money and you happen to also attend the school, maybe you should donate if you can. You don't want to? Don't. Similar to our organization, Be'ezrat Hashem. We don't ask people for donations. As much as people think we're after money, I've never had a conversation with any one person about money. When people ask me, listen, can I call you about money? Can I want to donate? I say, I'm sorry, you could just donate online. No, but I don't want to talk about it. There's nothing for me to talk about money. You want to talk? You can send an assistant. She'll process your donation if you'd like. No, but I want to talk. I don't talk about money. Why? Simple. I talked about money for 20 years. I have no interest in talking about money. I'm not going to convince you to donate. It will never be. Why? No interest in doing it. No motivation to do it. Simply thinking that and believing that there's more downside than upside in doing it. If the rest of the leaders in the Jewish community would do the same, we'd have extraordinary results. Why? People like Lieberman will no longer be able to have any power over us. Now, of course, that's going to have to require all of the people that are doing better than others to contribute a lot more. And not wait for someone to knock on your door and say, oh, listen, we're raising some money for somebody that's sick, we're raising some money for yeshiva. Don't wait for the calls. You have money, go find a place to donate to. Just like you found a second house to buy, just like you found a vacation to go to, just like you found another piece of jewelry you don't need, go find a place that qualifies to fit your agenda of what you want to help in the Torah world, and go do it. Stop waiting for people to ask you to donate. And if you have a lot of money, stop buying more businesses, stop buying more toys. Go publicize the Torah, save the Torah world from these reshaim. That's in reality one of the things that people need to do today. Why? Because so long as we take a single penny from the secular world, we will always be at their mercy. Even if it's not logical, even if it's outright evil, even if it's outright wrong, where they take a lot more from us, money-wise. Billions and billions of dollars are taken from the religious people by the secular world, much more than we could ever imagine. The amount of benefit that the religious community gets from any government is literally a microcosm in comparison to the amount of benefits and money that the world gets, or the country gets, or the local community gets from those very same religious people or their friends or their family. If anybody would just simply look at the actual numbers, you would see it's literally an embarrassment for anyone to say this with a straight face, that the religious community at large is benefiting from people in any way, shape, or form. Surely you're always going to find a few mooches here and there that take advantage when they don't need to, take a welfare check even if they live in $1 million mansion, take a government assistance even though they're the ones that should be assisting the world. Surely you're always going to find some clown that does this, but you're also going to find a bunch of those in the secular world. And a lot more in the secular world. Hence the reason why over $2 billion is spent on keeping those secular people in jail. Perhaps if they increase the budget to $5 billion, maybe they could get them out of jail and actually to do TeShuva by instituting programs like Rav Grossman's program that's been going on for the last 30 years. Notably the best jail program in the history of mankind, where literally the success rate of the prisoners that go to his program, Rav Grossman's program, and learn Torah every single day with the rabbi that they assign. Literally, the success ratio is out of this world. These people, not only they don't go back to jail, they become a positive influence in society. Was that started by a secular person? Absolutely not. Can it be started by a secular person? Absolutely not. Why? You have to have Torah. The amount of benefit that the secular world gets from the Torah world is literally unbelievable. For any of these clowns to say that we, as religious people, are benefiting from them, it's really a rebuke from Shamayim. Why? We're not helping each other enough. If we were helping each other enough, some of the rich people here in America, in Spain, in Venezuela, in the UK, in Australia, all over the world, some of these rich people would literally stop looking forward being the best person or the highest person on the Forbes 500 list, write a few $100 million checks to different major institutions with a condition: you are never allowed to get any government assistance. You need something, you call me. That's what we should do. You have money, help people. But if we don't, the Torah will continue being burned in public. Hashem's name will continue being desecrated on a regular basis. And the religious people will continue looking like they're all homeless, miserable people that cannot help themselves get out of their own way. When the truth is quite the opposite. the contribution that the religious people make to society, especially to the secular world, is so extraordinary that it truly should be embarrassing for anyone to even think that they've ever helped one religious person in their life as much as that religious person helped you. Why? That's what it says. That's what it says in the Torah. A person that helps someone that's learning Torah, he is the one that's praiseworthy. Why is he praiseworthy? Because he's the one that gets all the benefits. He's the one that gets the benefits. The helper gets the benefits, not the helped. That avrech that you just donated a few $1,000s for, he would have gotten it anyway from somewhere else. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is the one that runs the world, not you. You chose to be the vessel that Hashem used. For that we should all pray for every single day, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu will use us as vessels to help the Torah get bigger, to help Kiruv, to help the poor, to help Hashem's name be glorified in every Jewish household and even non-Jewish household, to eliminate idolatry, to eliminate any falsehood, to eliminate all these lefty, liberal, communists. Do that. Pray for that. Pray that HaKadosh Baruch Hu uses you as a vessel to do such great things. And don't for a second think that he can't do it without you, or that person that you help wouldn't have gotten it otherwise. When a person understands divine providence, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu bechvodo be'atzmo, him himself is the one that is taking care of the pockets and the bank accounts of every single creature on planet Earth. The ant or the Arab, the secular Jew or the religious Jew, the poor person or the multi-billionaire. HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself is the one that decides how many dollars are going to be in their pocket, how many dollars they're going to make, how many dollars they're going to lose, how much they're going to spend on things they want, and how much they're going to spend on things they don't want. When a person understands all of these things, and even further, understands the actual mechanics of things, the real numbers, you should know that to be a Jew today, to be a Jew that's a religious Jew today, is something you should be more proud of than any other time in history. Because for you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu not only created the world, but he keeps the world going. But if that's not enough, it's because of you that many people in society are still alive, still able to eat, still can actually make it to the hospital in time, still can learn Torah freely, both financially and with the freedom. The amount of benefit that the religious community gives to the world is literally unmeasurable. And those that do it for the sake of heaven know this. They may not publicize it. They may not even understand the extraordinary impact they have on the world as much as they do. But it is true. And it is a fact. And for a person to be a proud religious Jew today, should be easy. Why? You are the number one resource in the economic world, both the spiritual and literally the physical. And if you know that, then it'll make it much easier for you to help others do the same. Because once you're proud of who you are, you already become allergic. You already become a something that everybody else wants to be like. You become a something that other people can catch on. What is that called? Like when something is infectious, but in a positive way. I think there's a different word too. But nonetheless, you guys get the point. If a person knows who they are, they know how much good they bring to the world, then it makes it easier for them to help entice other people to do the same thing. If we were truly proud of who we are, and we truly understood how much good we bring to the world as religious Jews, not just as Jews, as religious Jews, then we would also have the confidence to stop taking any benefit from any foreign government, any Christian organization that's full of idolatry, any Zionistic and heretical government or institution. We'd simply have the emunah in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that just like He allowed us to survive while destroying all of our enemies throughout all of the generations, and not only survive, He allowed us to prosper. Surely He will allow us to do it if we do even more for the sake of His name. If each one of us starts acting like a proud Jew, we can in itself do a lot more kiruv, do a lot more Torah, do a lot more good in the world. Because now that you're proud of it, you're no longer hiding it, you're no longer sticking your head under some type of pillow as soon as some article comes out. You're no longer embarrassed to have a conversation. You're no longer defensive. You simply know where you stand. If a person knows where they stand, and they know that they are the ones that have the truth, the debate was already won. There's no point to have the debate anymore. You know you have the truth. What's the debate? Who has time for entertainment? Perhaps those people that get $80 million a year from the Israeli government have time for entertainment. But usually the more productive people in society don't have much time for that. They're too busy producing good. Let's produce good in the name of the Torah, and Be'ezrat Hashem, sanctify Kadosh Baruch Hu's name with only His hand to help us.
כחלק מהפעילות שלי בארגון בעזרת השם, הגענו לכאן לבית חולים לשמח ילדה מתוקה בת 7. זאת ילדה של משפחה שאנחנו עוזרים לה מדי חג בסל מזון, וגם מדי שבת לפעמים אנחנו גם עוזרים להם. הרב ירון דואג להם. ושמענו שהילדה מאוד רוצה לחגוג יום הולדת, ולהורים יש קושי לחגוג עקב המצב הכלכלי. היום בבוקר השפזו את הילדה המתוקה הזאת עקב דלקת ריאות, ואנחנו רוצים לשמח אותה. הרופאים הבטיחו לה שעד יום שלישי הקרוב היא משתחררת מבית החולים. לכן אני רוצה להודות לארגון בעזרת השם, לרב ירון, לרב כחלון, לרבנית כחלון, שאני שליחה ופעילה ומשמחת את המשפחות האלה בזכות הרבנים הקדושים האלה, בזכות בורא עולם ובזכות התורמים. תודה רבה, ואנחנו הולכים לשמח אותה עד לב השמיים.
שערי שמיים נפתחים אליי היום, זהו רגע מיוחד, רב חסד ואמת, האם תשמע לתפילותיי.
הנה אנחנו כאן חוגגים יום הולדת, ולא רק יום הולדת, גם מסיבת הודיה לילדה המתוקה הזאת, והאמא כאן איתי, והיא רוצה לספר את גודל הנס שקרה, אבל כמעט זה לא קרה, השם ישמור לא עלינו. והאמא פה איתי רוצה לספר.
יש לה אסתמה כרונית כבר כמה שנים, וממש תפס אותה באמצע הלילה, ממש קוצר נשימה, ממש בקושי נשמה לי, והייתי צריכה להזמין אמבולנס, וממש היא הייתה אפילו בתוך האמבולנס, עד שהגיעה לבית חולים עם בלון חמצן, ממש המצב שלה ממש לא טוב. הרופאים אמרו שזה ממש היה הצלת חיים.
מה הרופא אמר? שבעצם אם הייתם מפספסים,
אם היינו מתקשרים יותר מאוחר זה היה יכול להיגרם במצב לא טוב בכלל.
והיא הייתה 24 שעות עם בלון חמצן.
ממש, היה אסור להוציא לה את זה.
אז הנה היום אנחנו כאן לחגוג יום הולדת 7. נכון שרה יקרה? מודה גם לקדוש ברוך הוא ששמר עלייך.
תודה, ותגידי תודה להשם, נכון?
איך חמודה, היא מתרגשת.
השם ביום ההולדת שלי אני לברך את איתי היקרה שתביא